What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm making this video. This video is in response. This is actually, okay. I'm gonna end up titling this video Dillon Dismantles Doug. But let me be clear about something. So first of all, this is a response to Douglie-Do-Wrong's video. Miami Dolphins place Preston Williams on injured reserve. He talked about Mark Walton as well in that video. His suspension. He talked about some other things as well. There's a lot to cover, but before I get into it, look. I think Doug is hella naive and kind of lives in a different reality. Like, I really do. But at the same time, it's like I said, man, I think Doug's a good guy. He's a nice guy. He's, he helped me out a little bit when I was, first starting off. Look, we disagree, and that's fine. It's not a big deal, okay? I'm going to make an argument against a lot of the things that he says, and we disagree a lot. This video is literally to dispute a lot of the things that he has said. But again, it's not out of like, malice or anything like that. I like Doug. Again, I think he's a good dude. And I think he means well. And at the end of the day, he's one of the Dolphins fans that does want to see the Dolphins win. He does want to see good things for the Dolphins, and that I respect. Absolutely. He's not an 0-16er. He doesn't want to lose every game, so on and so forth. I respect that. He still denies that it's a tank, and so on and so forth. But anyway, we'll get into that as we go along. So that's why I say he lives in a different reality, but it's because he's naive and he's trying super hard. And I get it. I get it. You want to have that hope and optimism, but you got to be real, man. And so it is what it is. Anyway, so let's get into it. So like I said, he started off, I'm gonna try and keep this as chronological as I possibly can. Also too, I am gonna have a bunch of links in the description box of this video. Obviously, I'll have the Stephen Ross petition link, as I always do, but I will also have the link to Douglie-Do-Wrong's video, so that way you guys can see for yourself what he said. So that way also, that I am going to paraphrase a lot and stuff of things that he said, so you can see that I'm not putting words in his mouth, and that I just can't necessarily remember the exact words that he said, so I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but so you can see for yourself that it's at least, on the same wavelength as what he had said, right? So just for accuracy, transparency, all those things, and so you can, watch his video and get his perspective for yourself, and it's not just me talking about it. Also, though, I will be putting some other links in the description box as well. One to an article that's relevant to what I'm going to talk about. Also, it'll be, some links to some other places that'll be relevant. You'll see, and I'll talk about that as we go. So let's get right into this. And so first and foremost, he starts off talking about Preston Williams, his injury. Unfortunately, it's an ACL. He's out. Reports are that, he's going to be out throughout the entire offseason, through OTAs and everything, and he could even potentially miss training camp. Now, Doug said he was going to be back for training camp. We don't quite know that yet. We'll see. That's whatever. That's seriously probably the most minor clarification that could be made out of this whole thing. But, that's where we started. That's where he started. I mean, there's really no disagreement there. I mean, he's definitely going to be out for the remainder of this season and throughout the offseason. I mean, that's without question. He's not going to play another down for us. And I do hope that the kid comes back, bounces back. But it's tough. I mean, he's a wide receiver. And an ACL injury is tough, man. And so we're going to have to see if he can bounce back and how he does, right? We've had other guys, and there's been tons of examples of guys throughout the league who don't make it back so well after that. Hopefully he is. He does seem to be a fighter, and he does seem to have like the, you know, the work ethic and stuff like that. So we'll see, but you know, that's just a waiting game. So moving on. Then he started talking about Mark Walton and his suspensions, or his suspension, and so on and so forth. And so his argument, though, what he was saying in his video is that he was like, well, why did they wait so long to suspend Walton? Right? Because obviously, so I was mistaken. It wasn't 4 arrests. It was 3 arrests. So I was off by 1 in my previous video. He had 3 arrests, and that's why he ended up getting released by the Cincinnati Bengals. But the thing is, though, is this suspension is not related to those arrests. Those arrests were months ago at this point. And the suspension is for violating the substance abuse policy. So one of the articles that I am going to put it as a link in the description box is an article talking about his arrests. So the Miami, it actually talks about, you know, the Dolphins signing him, but it goes into his, so I'm going to read a little bit. Dolphins signed Mark Walton, former University of Miami running back, who's been arrested 3 times this year on Sunday. So this is like right after we signed him. Walton was waived by the Cincinnati Bengals in April following news of his 3rd arrest. He's facing a felony charge of carrying a concealed weapon, as well as a misdemeanor charge of marijuana, whatever, reckless driving, and resisting a police officer without violence following the March incident, right? They always throw marijuana possession in there, especially when it's African American, so whatever on that. But he got arrested for carrying a concealed weapon, reckless driving, resisting a police officer without violence, blah, blah, blah. Those are way different than substance abuse policy of the NFL, right? It's not conduct policy, right? So if he got suspended for conduct, then it could have been related to those things, but it was related to substance abuse. Okay, so what does substance abuse mean? That could mean a couple things. One, either it means PEDs, what is it? Physically enhancing drugs or whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about. The illegal drugs that you know players will use to give them a physical edge, right? Physically enhancing drugs or whatever the fuck it is, whatever PED stands for. Anyway, so either it can mean that, which obviously has absolutely nothing to do with any of the charges he got, or it is possible that it could be marijuana, right? Because that is still illegal in the country overall. I don't know if it's legal. I don't know what the status is in that state. Florida, I don't think has it legalized yet. I don't know. I don't actually know what the statuses are, but it doesn't matter anyway, because that was just a misdemeanor charge of possession, and he didn't get a DUI or anything. He got reckless driving and resisting and carrying a concealed weapon, right? But he didn't get a DUI, so they didn't say he was under the influence of anything, and that was, again, still months ago. This suspension and everything just happened, well, now, first of all, but so it takes, you know, a couple weeks, because if so it's substance abuse, so either PEDs or even if it was marijuana, right? They do random piss tests and so on and so forth, and it takes some time to, you know, get those samples back, or get sent to the lab, get those samples back, blah blah blah, and then they got to talk to the team. Now they also just traded Kenyon Drake, right? Because that's part of this as well, right? Because the Dolphins knew about this suspension before Kenyon Drake was traded. Now, Kenyon Drake's been on the trade block since the preseason, first and foremost. But secondly, again, this suspension is not even related to his arrest charges like Doug was alluding to. They're completely separate. So he was like, why did they wait so long to suspend him? Because he just... they just got whatever results back. It takes whatever time to get those results back. They informed the Dolphins at whatever time during the process they informed them. But it was definitely before the Drake trade. They informed the Dolphins that there was a possible suspension coming up, so they knew ahead of time before they traded Drake that Mark Walton could get suspended for 4 games because of using either PEDs or something else, right? So they decided to trade him anyway. So the first thing that he mentions was, why did they wait so long to suspend Walton? Because it's a separate incident, has nothing to do with those, and whatever test he had been given or whatnot came back. They got the results back whenever they got them back. It was recently. And then, they informed the Dolphins that Mark Walton is likely to have a suspension, which was before the Drake trade. And they traded him anyway, which is the next thing that he talked about was, trading Drake anyway, which again goes to their poor decisions and their bad talent evaluation and so on and so forth. Because then they took Mark Walton in, right? And he's done some good things for us, yes, but he had 3 arrests. He got for pretty serious things except for the marijuana possession, and he was cut from the Bengals. And then sure, you take a flyer on him, but now he has another problem, right? This is a new incident is the point. This is a new incident. Now he's violated the PED policy and he's got a 4-game suspension. If it happens again, the suspension could be, 8 games or an entire season. I don't think though, I'm trying to remember how it went down for Dion Jordan. I can't remember how they progressed. I know he got his first suspension was like 4 games. I can't remember if his second suspension was a full year. I want to say it was his third. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is it will be incremental, but it becomes a liability. And then as good as he might be on the field, if he doesn't actually play because he's not here because he's suspended, then what good is that? Anyway, but then he talked about Drake some more and talked about how Drake didn't want to stay. Yes, of course Drake didn't want to stay. I mean, he said publicly, right? But again, in the going back when there was rumors that after we got blown out the first couple games, when there was rumors that players wanted to be traded, first of all, there were 3 players that there was reports that 3 players wanted to be traded. Minka came out publicly and said it, whatever, and then he ended up getting traded. But then everybody just ignored and forgot about the other 2, one of which was a veteran player that hadn't come out publicly. Now we can say it was Drake. He didn't want to be here because he's the veteran player. But of course not. Why would you want to be part of this? They're misusing him like crazy in this regime, and they're full on fucking tanking and have this philosophy of trying to lose. Why would you want to be part of this? And then he goes to the Cardinals and beasts out, just like Minka Fitzpatrick goes to the Steelers and beasts out. Right? So it makes perfect sense. But he did the right things and he said, publicly or whatever. But that's why I said then, don't take too much into that. They're saying these things publicly because it's public. But there's a lot different conversations. That's why I said Xavier Howard, but he even did say publicly, yeah, I am, thinking about it, and I am worried about the prime years of my career. He did make those statements public. But he also did say that he's trusting the process. But I've been saying for a while, don't think that means, or the fact that he's got, a contract for the next few years, don't think any of that stuff means that Xavier Howard's guaranteed to be here for the future. If he decides he wants to leave, and do you think that just because the trade deadline came and went that he won't be traded at some point? His contract is very friendly to other teams if they want to trade for him. They can't this season for the remainder of their season, but once we get into the offseason, they absolutely could. And so if for some reason, Xavier Howard's I don't want to be a part of this, because by the time we even get the chance to be competitive, I'm going to be out of the prime years of my career. And I do not want to waste the prime years of my career. But unfortunately, that could play out for a lot of other guys on this team currently, because it's going to be years. It's not going to be a miraculous turnaround next year. I don't care how many fucking draft picks we have or whatever. It's going to take time, and players could want out. Also, it's, I hate the framing, and I'll get more into this in a little bit, but I hate like Doug and a lot of people's framing. This actually pisses me off, because he talks about like, you know, how he didn't want to be here and he like quit on the team and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. But, and then he also talks about how the Dolphins wanted to keep Minkah Fitzpatrick, and how he was, you know, super upset because he was being used in different, you know, positions and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, all of that makes sense, right? Why would you want to be part of this tank? Why would you want to waste the prime years of your career? And yes, why would you want to be used in positions that you're not meant for? That's not your position. He is a free safety, right? So they talked about, oh, well, they wanted him. Well, they didn't really try to keep him. They just, you know, gave him up. They could have said no, right? The Jags did that for a little bit with Jalen Ramsey. Ultimately, they did end up trading him because they were just going to have to. I mean, that was going to be untenable. It just wasn't going to work, especially with Jalen Ramsey, who's a big personality. He would definitely, and he's got a big ego, he would definitely make that a very difficult situation. Anyway, so, but it's this regime, Brian Flores and the coaching staff included, not just the front office though, that made the team as low talent and low experience and so on and so forth, that has caused a lot of these struggles and so on and so forth. It's their decisions that made the team that way, and part of the reason why like Minkah didn't want to be part of this, because that's the intentional stripping of the team, the intentional losing philosophy that he didn't want to be a part of. And then yeah, so but Doug went on and he even said, and this is paraphrasing a little bit, but it was stupid putting Fitz in the slot and McCain at safety. So he acknowledged in this video that it was stupid to misuse Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they should have just left him at free safety, and should have left McCain in the slot. But that's not what he was arguing before, right? First and foremost, he goes on to say then, but you know, the Dolphins saw his versatility. Yes, he's versatile, and yes, he can play multiple positions, okay? But in college, he played primarily free safety and slot corner with a little bit of boundary corner. Why? Because that's what his skill set and his body frame and his body style, his measurables are made for, right? He's a tall guy, but he's skinnier, he's lankier, he's faster, he's got good range, he's got, you know, good lateral movement, right? He can cover the deep field. He's got great ball skills. Those things make him a great free safety. He's also super smart, right? All those things make him a great free safety. He's a ball hawk. I mentioned that, I think. Or a slot corner. He's not as suited to boundary corner, but he can play a little bit. But that's why he only played a little bit in college, and why he only played a little bit last year with the Dolphins. And that's why primarily he was a free safety and a slot corner. And that's why in his first year, he beasted in those roles. And now that's why with the Steelers, he's beasting in free safety, because that's where his position is. The Dolphins were trying to use him at strong safety, and the Brian Flores Dolphins were trying to use him at strong safety and linebacker. Not at all fucking positions that he is suited for. Totally not positions that he is suited for. So it's the regime's fault for why Minkah Fitzpatrick wanted out, for why Kenyon Drake wanted out, for why guys wanted out, and why guys don't want to come to play for the Dolphins. It's their fault for how they have systemically designed this team, and then because they grossly misused him. Okay, but continuing on with Minkah Fitzpatrick, Fitzpatrick. So again, apparently the Dolphins saw his versatility and blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean you just grossly misuse him and put him in position. I mean, what if they were to say, okay, we're going to put you at defensive tackle? Like, really? I mean, if they did that, would people like make a big deal out of it then? Would people blame Brian Flores for I mean, I'm sure some people would, but there are some people that I'm sure would still give him, undue, benefit of the doubt. Even though there would be no doubt there. I mean, if he used Minkah Fitzpatrick as a defensive tackle, I mean, that's just absurd. He didn't, but I mean, he's not suited for linebacker. So there's a limit to his versatility, right? And then you don't put unnecessary things on his plate, because then he talked about, right? Because then he even went on to say that that they saw his versatility and that they essentially told him, hey man, we're going to make you a superstar, that you're going to play all over the field, that you're going to be getting interceptions and tackles and sacks and stuff. Yes. Okay. But what happened when they used him like that? He got exposed because he was playing positions that he shouldn't play, covering guys that he shouldn't be covering, doing things that he's not fit. He's not suited to do based off of his skill set and his measurables. And so he struggled. So he did get roasted a few times in coverage. Because you're putting way too much on his plate. He has to think way too much, especially about positions he's never played before, that he doesn't have any experience at, that are not suited to him at all. So it makes total sense. But then clearly when you put him where he's supposed to be, he beasts. He's got like 4 or 5 interceptions with a couple, like 1 or 2 forced fumbles with the Steelers, playing at free safety where he belongs. So that's another massive failure on this, whatever. And then Doug went on to say that, he just wanted to play one position, blah, 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 blah. That's just not true. It's just flat out not true. Minkah Fitzpatrick never said, I only want to play at free safety. He has said that free safety is his natural position and where he's best at. He has said things along those lines on a few occasions. He has also said that he is good at slot corner and has played that a significant amount in college, because that is true. Free safety and slot corner is what he played mostly in college, and those things he does excel at. He also has said that he has played some boundary corner, and he's okay to play. He's perfectly fine with playing free safety, with playing slot corner, and if needed, some boundary corner. And that's why Adam Gase used him there a little bit, because it was necessary, because we didn't have anybody to pair with Xavier Howard, and Bobby McCain showed to struggle pretty, he did okay there, but he definitely had his struggles. And so it was out of necessity. But he has said that he's okay with that. He has never said that he only wants to play free safety and that's it. And he keeps going on about how Minkah Fitzpatrick is just whining and complaining and crying. That's total fucking bullshit. And that's something that actually does piss me off, because it's characterizing him totally wrong. It's putting words in his mouth or taking words out of his mouth. It's, in some cases, it's not giving the full context, and it's blaming him for absolutely no reason. It's the coaching staff and this regime's fault for why Minkah Fitzpatrick wanted to leave, because they grossly misused him, and because they're intentionally trying to be bad and not having a winning season, and he doesn't want to waste the prime years of his career either. And then it's just flat out not true that Minkah Fitzpatrick has cried and whined and said he only wants to play one position. No, but when you use him properly, then he will excel. And then he also brought in about how, his mama came in. Yeah, because 1, his mother cares about him, and 2, she's right, because they were grossly fucking misusing him. I mean, come on, like really? Anyway. And then, so he goes on though to say the only reason why he's playing safety on the Steelers is due to injuries. And that also that if their safeties were healthy, then he would not be in the starting lineup, and then he would end up playing that Swiss Army knife role, blah 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 blah, whatever. But who do they have on their roster that would usurp Minkah Fitzpatrick? Well, let's take a look at their roster. So I have that here, and that's one of the links that I'm going to put up. I'll put a link in the description box to the Steelers roster. Let's see. Safeties, they have Jordan Dangerfield. Okay. I would argue Minkah Fitzpatrick is far better than him. They have Terrell Edmunds, who is a former first-round pick of theirs, but he's a strong safety. He's suited for that. He's built for that, right? He's built for being a more in-the-box safety and getting those sacks in the run support. That's what strong safeties are for. Free safeties are supposed to roam in the backfield and be a ball hawk. So you have two former first-round picks, right? Terrell Edmunds and Minkah Fitzpatrick playing free safety and strong safety. Okay, that actually makes amazing sense. Well, let's see. Okay, so now that's three, because then obviously Minkah Fitzpatrick. So they have Jordan Dangerfield, Terrell Edmunds, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Who else do they have? Let's see. Going down. Still no other safeties. Well, let's see. They have Sean Davis, but he's on injured reserve. But Sean Davis isn't going to play over Minkah Fitzpatrick. Are you serious? Minkah Fitzpatrick absolutely would start over Sean Davis. He would start over Jordan Dangerfield for sure. So those are the four safeties that they have on their... Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let's see. That's their roster. Now let's look at the depth chart. On their depth chart, they have Minkah at free safety, makes sense. Terrell Edmunds at strong safety. Jordan Dangerfield is the backup behind Terrell Edmunds. So they have him listed in as strong safety. Okay, again, a more in-the-box guy, but he is the backup and certainly wouldn't play over Minkah Fitzpatrick as free safety. And then Cameron Kelly's the other. I don't even know who that dude is. So to argue that even if they had their guys healthy, that Minkah Fitzpatrick wouldn't be starting at free safety is also ridiculous. And his play is proving it. The dude has fucking at least 4 interceptions now since going to the Steelers. And he's got forced fumbles. He's got tackles all over the place. The dude is balling out. Like, people keep trying to make these arguments like there's any legitimacy to it. And it's just absurd. They're trying to defend indefensible things. But again, and that's why I said, like, he's just trying so hard to believe it, even though the evidence is overwhelming. Anyway, let me backtrack just a little bit, right? So he also went to talk about how the number one overall pick, right? So because after he talked about Mark Walton and Preston Williams, he started going into some common themes that he saw, like in his comment section, right? And so one of the main things he saw was about the number one overall pick. He talks about how we could still get it. Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely ways that we could still get it. I totally agree with that. But one of the things that was in his comment section was, why did we win? Because, oh, blah, 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 blah. Why did we win? We needed to go 0-16. The Bengals are, blah, blah, blah. And then, he talks about, well, you don't know what teams want to do, so you don't know what the Bengals want to do. You don't know what the Dolphins want to do. You can't tell the future, blah, blah, blah. Which, okay, that makes sense. And I get that. Right? But that's part of my argument for why you don't get rid of proven guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick just for hopes and dreams, especially when your front office hasn't proven to be able to handle drafts or do well in regard to talent acquisition. So, but he talks about the one win, right? And, why did we do it? So on and so forth, and blah, blah, blah. For me personally, and this is part of the reason why I do respect him, because, like, for me, I just want to win. I personally don't care. Now, the fact of the matter is that with the Dolphins win and with every Dolphins win, it does drop our pick. And obviously the Texans and Steelers just won these past 2 games. So, or this past week rather. So those picks got hurt. As it stands right now, the Steelers pick is in late teens. And the Texans pick is in the mid-20s. And now the Dolphins pick is 3rd. Okay. So, you know, why win? Well, for me, I just want to win. I don't want to be 0-16. He doesn't either. And that's part, like I said, part of the reason why I do respect him, because he's not one of those guys. But at the same time, you know, I want to continue winning, right? Like, for me, I don't give a shit. And this is really the main point of this part is like, for me in this argument, this is really, this is actually not really even a disagreement so much with Doug, because again, he doesn't want to go on 0-16. The difference I have with him here is that he doesn't think it's a tank, which again is ridiculous because it's obvious that it is. But so also though, part of that is he did say that, okay, you know, we can't tell the future. You don't know what teams want to do, so on and so forth, which is true and is part of the reason why I don't agree with the tanking, or why I don't agree with jettisoning all these players just to get, you know, hopes and dreams. But also because, you know, later on in the video, he was like, yeah, but see, it's not a tank and I knew we were going to win a game or 2. And I said it at the beginning of the season. Okay, but you just admit that none of us can tell the future. So why are you acting as if your prediction then was just guaranteed to happen? Because all the evidence is that we were going to have an 0-16 season, right? And and for me, now, to be fair, he probably did at the time, and I don't remember specifically, but to be fair, he probably did say, you know, I don't think we're going to go. And he had. No, to be fair, I know he had said things like that. So he had said, you know, I don't think we're going to, but that's not proof. And this one win isn't proof that the Dolphins aren't tanking. Okay, again, they played a bad team that was massively injured, that got victimized by officiating, and the players fucking played hard and have played hard all season. Whereas the coaches have proven multiple times over now that they are trying to put this team in position to lose over the past few weeks. Okay, he did also say one thing real quick though. I enjoy winning. I could die tomorrow, and my last memory of the Dolphins is beating the Jets. Totally agree with that. And that's certainly another reason for winning, man. I mean, you know, not in hopes that you die tomorrow and then your last memory is a good one, but it's true though. Like, you know, I don't want to lose at all. I want us to win. And so, but that's what being a fan is wanting your team to win. So I totally agree with him that, you know, I mean, he didn't say it exactly like that it's not a fan. I mean, he actually goes and defends those guys, which I think is a bit ridiculous too. But whatever. But, you know, again, he's not an 0-16er. He just wants to win, because I do respect that about him, that he is a fan that just wants to win, and period. And that's the main point of that is I don't care about the number 1 overall pick or where we pick. It's about how you pick, not where you pick. And so I totally disagree with guys who are like, yeah, we should have lost so we could get the number 1 pick, blah, 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 blah. All right. Anyway, going back though to you know, tie this in a little bit, he then talked about you know, Laramie Tunsil and how we wanted to keep him, right? We wanted to keep Minkah Fitzpatrick, and we wanted to keep Kenyon Drake, and we wanted to keep Laramie Tunsil. Okay, well, they could have. They didn't have to. They didn't have to give those guys away, right? So, okay, you wanted to keep Laramie Tunsil. They actually even told Laramie Tunsil that he was not going to be traded. So, okay, sure, it might be hard to say no to 2 first-round picks, but also the framing of that is wrong, because he made it seem like the 2 first-round picks were just for Laramie Tunsil. But that's not actually accurate, because obviously Kenny Stills was also part of the trade value that the Dolphins were giving up for the 2 first-round picks, but there was also other picks involved as well, right? So it's not just, it's disingenuous to frame that trade as if it's 2 first-round picks for Laremy Tunsil. Yes, that is an exorbitant amount, but again, still not worth it, because Laremy, especially with the amount of holes that you have on this roster and the state of the offensive line, etc., but Laremy Tunsil is a generational talent at left tackle. And there's no certainty, no guarantee whatsoever, especially if we don't end up getting the first overall pick and Stephen Ross is so cravenly desperate for Tua and wants to trade up. If he did give away other first round picks, and look, people are even arguing it. They're like, yeah, well, if the Dolphins win a few more games and then because of that, they prove that they're not tanking. Yeah, okay, but if the Dolphins do end up winning, and I think that there's a couple more games that potentially are winnable, but if the Dolphins win 2 or 3 games on the season, then their draft pick is going to drop out of the top 5, and they would have to likely out of the top 5, and then they would have to move up to go get a quarterback that Stephen Ross wants. And people are defending, well, if that happens, then they have plenty of draft capital. Yes, but part of the reason why everybody was arguing for shipping all these players off is that you were going to use all those picks and have a bunch of darts to throw at the dartboard. But then if you trade away 3 first-round picks to move up to the first to get one guy, and then you neglect the offensive line and other things, then it's just a massive waste. So winning, honestly, in that regard, winning actually is a worse situation because of the potential there. Because it is very likely that Stephen Ross would tell them, look, trade away fucking that draft capital. Okay? And that could actually end up being part of the overall plan, right? The plan could be to just win 2 or 3 games, but have all this draft capital so they can move up anyway. But that would be a terrible decision. And then spend big in free agency? Hell nah. Worst approach that they could possibly take. So was it, could it potentially be hard to say no to that? Okay, maybe for some people. For me, it would have been easy. I would have been like, no, I'm keeping Laremy Tunsil and Kenny Stills. But even if it is hard to say no, you could still say no. So they didn't have to. And then, he wants to frame it as if Minkah Fitzpatrick was crying to get out, blah, 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 which again is not even true. He wasn't throwing any tantrums or hissy fits, and his public statements were, very PC, right? So, he was still honest, right? He did say, that he wished his mother would have talked to him, but he understands where she's coming from, and she's right? So, and then Kenyon Drake, he didn't want to be here. Oh, so it's his fault? No, it's not his fault. It's the fucking coaching staff and the regime's fault for designing this team and making these players feel the way that they feel. It's this organization's fault for making the players feel that they want to feel the way that they feel. It's absolutely absurd to say anything otherwise. And then he goes on to say about how, the Patriots will trade, and this is more in regard to, trading Minkah or whatever. The Patriots will trade Chandler Jones, and no one will blink an eye. But first of all, again, I've said that I don't want to be the Patriots, but stop comparing to the Patriots. It's a very unique thing there. Okay, nobody's going to ever replicate, Brian Flores or otherwise, I don't care who it is, nobody's going to replicate that, what the Patriots have done. And again, I don't want to anyway, because they're shady, because they don't, have a philosophy where they like to pay the players in-house when they prove themselves. I don't like that philosophy. I don't like the philosophy that right? So I don't like the fact that they're cheaters and they're underhanded and they're shady as fuck. I don't like all that shit. Okay? So I don't want to be the Patriots. But also, not only that, but they've proven to be far better at drafting than we have proven to be. Not to mention, they also don't overpay, which is part of, their philosophy. And that's actually a part of the philosophy that I do agree with when it comes to free agents. Now, I think that they're bad when it comes to paying their in-house guys. I think that they definitely need to pay their in-house guys, even if it is a big contract, and they refuse to do that. I think that's a failing in their philosophy. But when it comes to free agents, they don't spend big on free agents very often, right? And even the big name free agents that they do bring in, oftentimes they get them to take lesser contracts, right? So that's a part of the philosophy that I do agree with. Anyway, and then, but going back to Laramie Tunsil though real quick, they talked about how he wanted to be here. Yeah, he wanted to be here, but they traded him anyway, right? Also, he talked about going back to Minkah Fitzpatrick. He said, would you keep a prima donna who only wants to play one position, or trade him and get something? Again, he wasn't being a prima donna. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and he's perfectly justified in wanting to get out of this situation. And he has proven since he's left that when used properly, so part of his reasoning was, one, because of the philosophy that they're setting, and he's been proven right there. I mean, we got blown out for the first few games, and then we're 1-7 right now. So obviously we're having a terrible season. It's clearly by design, and so he didn't want to be part of that. But he's also proven that the other primary reason why he wanted to leave was because he was being grossly misused. And now he's proven that when he's not grossly misused, he balls the fuck out. So, I mean, come on, man. And then he goes on to say, well, we'll get players who want to be here if you don't, and we're building for the future. Dude, okay, but Jadeveon Clowney didn't want to be here. We saw guys like Frank Gore and Cameron Wake leave in the offseason because when they started seeing the fire sale, they didn't want to be here. Minkah Fitzpatrick got out because he didn't want to be here. Kenyon Drake got traded or was only going to finish out this year and go into free agency because he didn't want to be here. Like, and there's potential that even if the Dolphins did draft Tua, that he could just stay in school or not go to the Dolphins because he doesn't want to come here. Like, really, they are not, and not only that, but there is a substantial possibility that South Florida won't even exist in the near future. And you think that players don't actually take that into account? No, they do, because they're young, and the younger generations understand the effects of climate change on the planet and this country and so on and so forth. They are well aware of those things. So one of the arguments for, players are going to want to come here no matter what. Well, and the argument is no state taxes, which is true, but also because South Florida is awesome, it's beautiful, it's always sunny, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. The sea levels are rising, and it's flooding for absolutely no reason, even when it doesn't rain, because of the sea levels rising, and it might not even exist. And they do think about stuff like that. So trying to argue that players are going to want to come here anyway is absolutely ridiculous. In fact, there's tons of evidence to suggest that they won't. Then he goes on to say that another thing that people talked about is that we can't even tank properly or whatever. And then he goes on, to say, who says we're tanking? And then, he also said, I knew we'd win a game or two. Okay. First of all, you said earlier on that, we don't know what teams are going to do. We can't tell the future, blah, blah, blah. So you didn't know. You speculated. Okay? And honestly, we lucked in this win because, again, we played a team that ended up being really bad, that has a lot of problems going on right now in their own organization. They're massively injured. Like, half of their starters were out for this past game, and they were victimized heavily by terrible officiating. And then they had guys on the field opposite them that were playing for their pride and their careers, not their coach, which is some other bullshit that he said. And so they won. They lucked into that. Okay? But I bet you anything that if we don't get the number 1 overall pick, at the end of the seaon, I bet you anything that they are going to trade up to get the quarterback anyway. If they can, I mean, that obviously relies on the other team agreeing. But let's say the Cincinnati Bengals do get it. It's not unreasonable that they could want to pass on a quarterback, right? Because they do have Andy Dalton. They could get a quarterback later on or whatever. But if the Dolphins fell out of the top 5, because let's say they do beat the Bengals, let's say they do beat, and then thereby helping the Bengals to get the number 1 overall pick as well. But let's say they beat the Bengals, they beat the Jets again, and who knows, maybe they beat the Browns or the Giants, another couple teams that are struggling, right? So what if they get to 3 or 4 wins? I would love that, and I would be happy, although that's not really much of a success, but I would love to get more wins. But then that drops us for sure out of the top 5. And then what if the Steelers do keep winning? And what if they do somehow manage to squeak into the playoffs, right? And the Texans are going to go to the playoffs, okay? So then what if we don't end up having a top 5 pick of our own, and then the Steelers pick is late teens, early 20s, and then the Texans pick is the mid-20s. It's not unreasonable that Stephen Ross and this regime could trade away all 3 of those first-round picks to go up and get Tua Tagovailoa, or 2 of our first-round picks this year and 1 next year, or maybe even both next year, right? Because each pick, it has a value. And obviously future picks, even if it's a first-round pick, has lesser value because it's further into the future, right? So than a first round pick this year, right? Comparative. So it's got to add up. There's each point, or each pick is actually given points, right? And it's, you know, with each pick, there's the value, the point value drops and diminishes. So it's not unreasonable that the Dolphins could or would then trade up. And that would be a gross mismanagement of resources and handling the draft. But there is actually a substantial possibility that could play out. But that doesn't prove, even if we did win those games, that still wouldn't prove that we weren't tanking. The philosophy this whole season was to be as bad as we could to get as high a draft pick as possible, but also one of the primary things that signifies a tank is that you're trading away all of these players to get draft picks. That's part of the tank. That's part of one of the defining factors, defining characteristics of a tank, of a full-on tank. So to say it's not a tank is absolutely absurd. So who says we're tanking? I say we're tanking, of course, but so does the fucking organization of the Dolphins. Stephen Ross put down, dictated, demanded, ordered, whatever, however you want to say it. He demanded that that's what we do this season. And then clearly the front office acquiesced by getting rid of all of these players, and the coaching staff has also acquiesced by not only taking a part in those decisions to get rid of all of these players and bring in a whole bunch of nobodies that are young and inexperienced, blah, 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 but also because there's a pile, there's a list of decisions and things that they have done on the field, particularly in the past few games, that shows that they are trying to put this team in the worst position to succeed, right? So that's from not using Xavier Howard to shadow Juju Smith-Schuster specifically, right? Misusing him. That's misusing Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's putting Bobby McCain in a position he's never played before, and he hasn't done spectacular. The one interception he got was gifted to him by Dak Prescott, right? So he hasn't really done much of shit back there, and our secondary has sucked. We've given up one of the best passer ratings. Before this last game, it was 120 passer rating given up to opposing quarterbacks, which we'll get into a little bit more in a minute, right? So it's clear and obvious that we're tanking across the board. To deny it is just flat out denying reality. Anyway, so then he starts talking about the first 4 weeks of the season versus the past 4 weeks. And people are trying to compare the first 4 weeks to the second 4 weeks of the season and to use as an example of why we've made so much tremendous progress. Okay, and first of all, I mean, we just lost Walton and Preston Williams, so our offense is going to get even worse. Xavier Howard's out for the season. Rashad Jones hasn't played in forever, blah, blah, blah. But there's no indication, there's certainly not enough indication yet that this is anywhere going to be close to sticking. So let's get into it, right? So he did put up the graphic that I actually talked about before about how the first 4 weeks of the season, you know, we were every defensive category that, you know, we were ranked in, we were like 30th or less. 25th actually was our best statistic, and that was in sacks, right? And we only improved in the past 4 weeks to 20th, right? So the best statistic that we had in the first 4 weeks of the season, which was 25th in sacks, we only moved up to 20th in sacks over the past 4 weeks. And we made drastic improvements in the other categories, right? In passing yards allowed, I think we were 9th. In third down efficiency on defense, we were 8th, right? So substantial progress in those areas. But, okay, when you look at the rest of the information, it totally chips away at that, right? So first and foremost, where are we currently in league standings? So defensive league standings currently, we're still 32nd in the league with points allowed at 32 average. We're still 29th in the league with yards allowed at 402.4. We're still 20th in the league in passing yards, 251.6. And 31st in the league, giving up 150.8 rushing yards on the ground. Okay, so then we're still in the bottom of the league overall in all of these categories. Let's see. Yeah. So anyway, so he goes on to talk about how Doug goes on to talk about our pass defense has improved drastically over the past 4 games. Our pass defense has, but with who at corner? And he goes on to say that just shows what Brian Flores is capable of. No, it doesn't. Look at the dude. Are you kidding me? Look at the first 4 games versus the past 4 games. Okay, first of all, let's look at the teams that we played. Okay, so the first 4 games, we played the Baltimore Ravens, New England Patriots, Dallas Cowboys, and Los Angeles Chargers. All really good teams, all teams that were playoff teams last year and that are competing for the playoffs this year. Not only that, but let's look at the quarterbacks. So they had good teams, good overall teams, but then the quarterbacks that we had to face. Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, and Phillip Rivers. No shit, they fucking shredded us. But let's also note, though, that during those games, we were also still giving up over 200 yards on the ground average per game. So not only were they shredding us, and let's not forget that the Ravens set a bunch of fucking franchise records, the Patriots set some franchise records, and we set franchise worsts in those games. In yardage given up and so on and so forth. Okay? But then let's look at the past 4 weeks. We played the Washington Redskins, a bad team, okay, with who did we play? Anyway, the quarterback, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but obviously not fucking, let's see, Case Keenum, there we go. It was Case Keenum. So then we played Case Keenum, okay, against Case Keenum. Josh Allen against the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills actually are a good overall team, though, right? But the Washington Redskins, a bad team. The Buffalo Bills, a good overall team with a good, strong record. But their offense struggles. But we played against Josh Allen. The Pittsburgh Steelers, it wasn't Ben Roethlisberger, and that team obviously was struggling at the time. But we still lost. They were struggling early in the season. They've picked it up obviously since then, and they are now 4-4 because they just beat the Colts. But we were playing with Mason Rudolph, who just got back from being out of the concussion protocol, and then New York against Sam Darnold and a terrible offensive line. The poor kid is, he's having a rough time there behind that offensive line, and the team overall is not great. They're obviously 1-7. So does any of that context matter? Does any of that context? So he's like, oh, it shows what Brian Flores is capable of with nobody, no-name people on as cornerbacks. First of all, he did have Xavier Howard for part of that Pittsburgh game, and he was part of the reason why we were able to, stay competitive in that game. But aside from that, really, dude? You're going to sit there and say, that's why, okay, but we play the Colts and the Bills are our next two games. I would venture to guess that they are going to beat, both of those teams are going to beat us, and it'll probably be a little bit more one-sided than we've seen the past 4 games. We play the New England Patriots in Foxborough at the end of the year. They're going to fucking stomp us. It's ridiculous to say that, oh yeah, see, blah, blah, blah. It's cherry picking certain stats without giving the full context. And it's absurd to say that the past 4 weeks and the fact that we managed to squeak out a win, despite the fact that there's evidence to suggest that the coaching staff tried to lose the game, none of that proves anywhere close to definitively that this is anywhere going in the right direction. On its face, does it appear as if we're going in the right direction based off of, let's say, the scores? Yes, because we went from 59, and are there a couple stats here and there to suggest that? Sure. But overall, when you look at the grand scheme of things, we still haven't completely avoided being the worst team in history, although I think we're a little bit safer there and potentially can avoid that, but we haven't completely gotten out of dodge of that yet. And it doesn't prove that we're not tanking. It doesn't prove that we've really made that much progress, right? Has there been progress? Yes. And has there been bright spots? Yes, but one of those bright spots is now on injured reserve because he tore his ACL, and one of them can't stay out of trouble and isn't going to play for the next 4 games. So, and that's the thing. So the next 4 games, so our defense is already still super bad, right? So defensively, we're still 32nd in points allowed, 29th in yards allowed, 20th in pass yards allowed, and 31st in rush yards allowed. So still overall, we're at the very bottom of the league. Okay? Offensively, we're still 30th in points, 30th in yards, 29th in pass yards, and 31st in rush yards. But now we're going to be without our top running back and our top wide receiver going into this next game, or one of them. Come on, bro. It's going to get worse. And the Colts and the Bills are a good team. The Browns are struggling, but they do have a few wins, and they do have a really talented roster, and we play them in Cleveland. So that's a likely loss. Will we get blown out? Probably not, but that's likely going to be a loss. The Philadelphia Eagles, and then the New York Giants in New York, then the New York Jets in New York, then the Giants in New York, then the Bengals at home, then the Patriots in Foxborough. Anyway, let's continue on. And then he says, he goes on to say, you can't stop the coaches from coaching. Okay, sure. And do they have some credit in, let's say, the further development of Mike Gesicki? Sure. And some of these players like Preston Williams and Mark Walton, of course, because they're the coaches that are coaching them right now. So are they helping these guys to develop? Absolutely. But that's a small amount of credit because they've only been doing it for a couple months now, and it's only been a couple guys. And again, those couple guys, one of them is now injured for the next 9 months or so, and one of them can't stay out of fucking trouble. So, I mean, and then obviously, like, part of that is, you know, he's trying to defend them, saying that, you know, they're giving it their all and blah, blah, blah. But no, again, there is just so much evidence to suggest. And so, again, if we get into a game, there are going to be games in which we could be competitive again throughout the season. So let's continue to see if there's more evidence to suggest that they are throwing games. And do we lose games because of decisions that the coaching staff? I would venture to guess that we'll see more of that throughout the year. Then he says you can't stop the players for playing for the coach. Yeah, but they're not playing for the coach. But then he used the game ball video where, you know, some of the players like patted him on the back. Okay, sure, but that's like a couple players for one. It wasn't the whole team. There were players that were just kind of like standing around like, yeah. But aside from that, of course they're going to congratulate him, and of course they're going to be excited. They just fucking won. They've been putting their fucking lives and their careers on the line for this garbage. They've managed to overcome a bad team that is massively injured, has a lot of internal problems, and was getting very much victimized by bad officiating. Terrible, terrible officiating. The players put it out all on the field and managed to overcome, despite the fact that their coaches were trying to give the Jets opportunities to win this game. So they were excited because they did it. And okay, whatever, they pat him on the back. And again, why would the game ball go to Brian Flores anyway? Especially considering that there is evidence. Why? The reason why is because he did what he was supposed to do. He's been losing these games. The games in which we were actually competitive, we lost those games in large part, if not majority responsibility goes to him, right? But in large part because of the decisions that this coaching staff has made on the field. With timeouts, with player usage, they kept Shout Calhoun out of the game for absolutely no reason last game. You know, when he wasn't on the injury report, right? So, and he said that Brian Flores pulls out a win. No, he didn't pull out the win. The players pulled out the win. But anyway, Brian Flores got the game ball because he's been doing what Stephen Ross wants him to do. He wants him to lose games, and the first 4 games we played good teams with good quarterbacks, and we got our asses fucking handed to us. The past 4 games we played okay teams to bad teams with, you know, okay to bad quarterbacks. Right? Like, I mean, there's a massive difference there. And that's why you saw us do better. But in those games where we were actually competitive, we still lost games that were very winnable. Washington Redskins. We could have won the Buffalo game. We could have won the Pittsburgh game. We could have won any of those games. But those games were decided in large part, if not mostly because of decisions that the coaching staff made. But aside from that, Brian Flores isn't on the field. He's not a player. So he didn't pull it out in that way. The players did. And again, his decisions on the field, and him and his coaching staff, he's also responsible for the decisions his coaching staff makes. It's ridiculous to say that, you know, it's only Patrick Graham's fault. No, he's on the headset. He hears the play call. He can see it on the field, right? Like, he can object to it, right? And also, it's ridiculous to think that he has been given the order by Stephen Ross, but he wouldn't pass that down to his coaches. But his decisions. So again, personnel decisions. Why did you keep Shaq Calhoun out when he's been one of your best offensive linemen to this point, when he wasn't injured or anything? Why would you not have Xavier Howard shadow Juju Smith-Schuster when you're known for being a defensive-minded guy and you're known for having press corners in New England that shadow receivers and so on and so forth? Okay? Why would you do that fucking... Anyway. And then he also went on to say that he was able to overcome an inept, young, and inexperienced team. No, it's not him, and he's part of the reason why this team is young and experienced and so on and so forth. Because he's part of the fucking group at the table that makes those decisions. Stephen Ross, Chris Greer, Marvin Allen, Reggie McKenzie, Brian Flores. Those are the 5 guys that sit at the little fucking round table meetings that discuss all of these major fucking things, right? They are all in that same loop. They all have eyes and ears on the situation, and they all have a say. So Brian Flores is in that, and then he disseminates that information to his coaching staff. And so it wasn't him that overcame a bad team that was massively injured and getting victimized by bad officiating. It wasn't him. His decisions on the field with not having Shaq Calhoun in there, his timeout usage, blah 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 blah, right? No. He showed that he's trying to lose the game. The players overcome it, but he gets the credit unduly. Anyway, I mean, it's absolutely fucking absurd. So, look, like I said, I wanted to, but at the end of the day, I mean, I like Doug, and in a lot of ways, I do respect him. Like I said, I do respect him because he's not a fan of going 0-16. He's not one of those kinds of fans, and that's good because I don't think that's an actual fan. But he does irritate me, you know, when it comes to things like saying that Minkah Fitzpatrick was just crying and blah, blah, blah. No, he's perfectly justified in that. And then, anyway, it's just a lot of the stuff that it doesn't make any fucking sense, though. So it's like, whatever. But, I mean, I get it because, again, he's trying so hard to prove, to convince himself, not just the people that watch him, but himself, that this is not tanking, even though, I mean, again, the one of the staples of tanking, one of the things that makes a tank is jettisoning all those players. So the simple fact that you say it's not a tank when one of the key components to a tank exists, not just one, but multiple key components, but that's one of the main ones, and there's only a couple anyway. But anyway, so like I said, I had to though. Like I gotta rebut these things. And so, you know, because there's absurd narratives, right? And a lot of it just doesn't make sense, blah, blah, blah. So I gotta respond to these things. But again, it's not out of like malice or anything. It's just about having the conversation. It's about bringing up the full context, the full perspective, because he leaves a lot of things out, you know? He doesn't give all the information in a lot of ways. Like when he was saying that, you know, but is it true that over the past 4 games, where our defense is ranked 9th overall in the past 4 games, for pass yards giving up? Yes. But on the season, we're still 29th. And again, the teams that we played in the first 4 weeks are vastly different than the teams we played over the past 4 weeks. Far better teams. I mean, only as of right now, only one of the teams we played over the past 4 weeks. Again, so the first 4 teams, great teams. All of them are competing for playoff spots. All of them have winning records. Okay, the Patriots are fucking 8-1, right? Defending Super Bowl champions, all with great quarterbacks. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Phillip Rivers, Lamar Jackson. But only one of the teams we played over the past few weeks has a winning record, and that's the Buffalo Bills. But they're running an offense with Josh Allen who's struggling. And then you had Mason Rudolph and the struggling Steelers, who just got to 500 with their win over the Colts. But the Jets are 1-7 with Sam Darnold behind a bad offensive line, and their entire team is just decimated with injuries, and not to mention all of the internal organizational problems. The Redskins are fucking 1-7, right? So with Case Keenum at the helm, so it's not comparable. It's massively disingenuous to just say, oh yeah, well, the past 4 weeks we're 9th in pass defense, but leave out the fact that we're 29th still on the season, and leave out the fact that in the first 4 games we played great teams with winning records. One of them's the defending Super Bowl champion. They've all got good quarterbacks. In the past 4 games we played losing teams. I mean, when we played the Steelers, they were 2-4, right? When we played the Jets, they were 0-7, or yeah, or no, they were 1-7, 1-6, whatever. I mean, like, it's just not comparable. Anyway, so I had to do that. That's where I'm going to end this video. This ended up being another long video, over an hour long. It is what it is. There was a lot to talk about. I took a ton of notes because there were a ton of things that I had to respond to. And look, you know, it is what it is. We obviously have to wait and see how things play out in the long run. But, you know, and look, again, at the end of the day, too, I'm going to have his video down in the description box. I'm going to have links to, you know, these different sites where I got this information and stuff, so you can see for yourself the different facts, right? Like, you know, what have you. So check out also the article about, like, you know, Mark Walton and his arrest. His suspension is not at all correlated to the things he got arrested for, right? So blah, 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 blah. There was a bunch of things that I had to address. So I did that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it here. This video is definitely long enough. It's, you know, going on an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to wrap it up. I do hope you guys, and again, just final thing though, before I do my sign off, it's no malice towards Doug. It's about having the and honestly, I would even love to have, you know, maybe one day him and I can do like a, you know, a live stream thing together, and we can have a little debate, right? And we can, and like I said, I'm perfectly fine to do that. Like I'm okay with that. And I'm definitely, you know, I'll definitely be respectful. I'm not gonna, like, you know, start screaming and be massively aggressive and, like, you know, punch my screen, like, do ridiculous shit, right? Like, I'm good to have a debate, and we can disagree on certain things. I will, you know, definitely vehemently argue my points though, and I will express, like, you know, if we do have that opportunity, I will tell him, look, dude, it's not right to blame the players, and it's not right to characterize Minkah Fitzpatrick as if he's being a baby. And then I will, you know, state my argument. And it's fine if we disagree. Some things I do agree with him on. Like I said, I do respect the fact that he's not an 0-16er, and he does want to win, right? So it is what it is. But I had to respond because he is a prominent content creator with a lot of people that he talks to, right? He's got a few thousand followers, subscribers, right? And I'm still up and coming. I've, you know, crossed 200 now, so thank you to everybody who's a subscriber and who continues to subscribe. We are growing, and eventually we will get onto that same level. But right now I don't have as big of an audience, and he's got a much bigger audience. But I got to do what I can, and I'm the only voice really. Again, I agree with K-Flexin more than Doug. And TD, he's a good guy and he means well, but he's something. He's a character, that's for sure. But, and I agree with him the least amount. But all of those guys in varying degrees are, you know, on board with the tank. And that's the one thing that I am explicitly different on, and I definitely have a different perspective. And so I got to continue to do this because I do put, you know, I mean, look, at the end of the day, again, my main goal is to give you all of the facts, all of the context, everything, and the best analysis based on all of that, right? Almost all of them will talk about certain subjects, but then leave out like massively important context that is needed not only for their evaluation of the situation, but is needed to give and provide the audience so they can make an educated decision for themselves on what they think. Like, you can't expect your audience to be able to determine for themselves if you leave out important pieces of context or data or information. Like, again, we're 9th in passing yards over the past 4 games, but overall we're still 29th, right? So anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you guys do enjoy my perspective and my analysis and the fact that I care about facts and data and all that stuff, right? So I hope you guys like that. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and my videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And of course, as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.